Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana Harinque if you're new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back. Today is Thursday, March the 17th, and today we're talking about something that I think all of you have probably talked about in the last week or so, and that is rising gas prices. We know gas prices are very high right now, record-setting in many locations, but I think a lot of us forget we have to fill up our own personal car, but what about local governments and cities that have to fill up tons of different vehicles, from utility cars to police vehicles and more? So today I am joined by AL.com reporter John Sharp. John is here today to talk a little bit about what local governments do when fuel rises this much. So John, thank you for coming today and explaining this to us a little bit. I think that we get caught up in our own drama of having to fill up our own gas tank, and we forget that, we only have maybe one, two cars in a family sometimes. We don't have a whole fleet of cars.
You are correct. And there's not much, that cities and county governments can do. They can't just stop policing our streets. They can't stop providing road work. They can't stop patching the roads. They certainly can reduce the amount that they do, but government just doesn't stop. If it did, we would all have we'd have some issues, because police and fire vehicles have to run, EMTs, emergency medical transport vehicles have to run, and then of course those big hulking public works vehicles. Those are all require a large amount of fuel that city and county governments are paying a lot for right now. Usually, what city and county governments do is they budget for and prepare for an increase in gas taxes or gas prices every year. But they didn't anticipate this kind of increase. We're, largely seeing, increases of what we've seen the last couple of weeks. Certainly has created a sticker shock for a lot of city and county officials.
Well, and like you said, there's one thing to prepare for a little bit of fluctuation. There's a totally different conversation when we're preparing for $4 and up averages. I don't think that you can go anywhere, at least anywhere around me, and find anything for less than $4 at the moment per gallon. And again, that adds up for one car, let alone a fleet of vehicles. So tell us, do the cities have any type, and the local governments have any type of deal that they can work out, maybe to get a little bit of a break on those fuel costs and gas taxes, or are they just kind of paying the same thing that we are?
Yeah, some cities will prepare during the beginning of a fiscal year for a certain amount of bulk purchases in fuel. But again, when the prices start fluctuating and going up and down, the other costs go up as well. The cost of asphalt, for instance. And what we're seeing is some county governments having to decide whether or not to curtail their resurfacing projects. Your roads will start being resurfaced here this spring, and certainly well into the summer. It's a big part of especially a county road budget, or road construction budget. And that right now seems to be the one that could be impacted the most from this increase right now. We could see some of that curtailed. So if you live on kind of a choppy road that, is slated to get resurfaced this year, the potential could be where that might not happen until next year. So that seems to be one of the biggest impacts right now that we're seeing. Yes, cities and county governments do prepare each year for the cost of how much fuel is going to cost them, and some of them enter into a bulk purchasing type of arrangement. But this type of increase certainly has that filter down effect, where other materials that go into perhaps other portions of municipal and county government, the basics like road surfacing, are going to go up and will be impacted.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that about road surfacing and saying getting your street repaved. That might be one of the things that has to be cut due to these rising gas prices. Why that project specifically? Is that because it requires more gasoline and more fuel to do a project like that? Or is that just because that is a project that is a little bit more able to be delayed versus, again, running EMT cars, running police cars, and things of that nature?
Yeah, you're correct. It can be delayed. It's up to county officials and engineers to decide where those delays can be had, and how that's going to be. But the cost of asphalt, which is made up of a byproduct of petroleum distillation, has gone up as well, and so that's what's driving that particular cost. When you're putting down new asphalt on the road, that's coming from the cost of fuel as well. And so that's something that, simply has to be, county officials, administrators, and engineers have to reconsider how that's being utilized within their overall county budgeting process right now. Yeah, I mean, police vehicle, I mean, law enforcement as well. They're being asked to look at whether or not, they need to run as many police cars at a particular time, whether or not a vehicle should be idling for a certain amount of time versus when gas prices are much lower. So everybody's kind of looking, even law enforcement, they're looking at their budgets to see where certain cutbacks can be had right now. I'm not aware, at least I interviewed a lot of city officials. I'm not aware of any big, huge cut that's coming. For instance, we're not going to run any public works vehicles for the month of June. I haven't heard anything like that. It's just been kind of incremental cutbacks. And I think the term that was commonly used in all these interviews that I did was the word adjustment. And that's kind of where city and county officials are right now. They're not looking at making any kind of radical changes, but there are a lot of adjustments in their budgets that they're looking at in order to accommodate for this sudden surge in gas prices.
Well, and like you said, this is a sudden surge. There is some pain at the pump here for a lot of us. And, I think this kind of is a time where it allows people to look at their vehicles a little bit more. I mean, I have a Jeep. It is not fun to fill up. It could be worse, but it's not great. It's an older Jeep as well. So I know that other people in similar situations are saying, look, is it time to look at a car that is more fuel efficient, maybe that is hybrid or electric? So is that conversation also happening within local governments and police departments and places of that nature as well?
Well, right now, if anything, that the conversation that I understand that's going on more and more is whether or not we should even be purchasing vehicles right now. There's being some conversations in regards to holding back on fleet purchases in cities and counties throughout the state. I am not aware of a wholesale electric vehicle push by any community right now. Not to say that's not happening. That wasn't necessarily part of the story I worked on last week, but that certainly is going to be a conversation going forward as we see gas prices surge and as we see the EV market start to shake out. We're seeing them manufactured here in Alabama.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe there could be some incentives coming. Who knows? With these electric vehicles, some of the parts, especially being manufactured here in Alabama, maybe they could work out a deal there. I know that a lot of people have been thinking that way recently. When you are in line at your local gas station, or when you are sitting there sweating as those numbers or that ticker tape goes up. So, John, tell us what else you learned from your reporting here. What else local governments are doing, if anything, to offset that cost? You mentioned the road projects or other projects that can be delayed, but is there any talk of maybe moving this on to the taxpayers?
No tax increases. I don't think any city wants to jump into that right off the bat. That would be very controversial. It's a matter of readjusting their budgets. A lot of larger cities that have received their COVID-19 funding are trying to make their budgets whole. And in some cases, like here in Mobile, the city didn't suffer any significant budget deficits during COVID-19. So the additional money that they're getting from the federal government, or have already received from the federal government, is allowing them to have a little bit more flexibility in a particular this tough period of time right now. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, the reserves are being boosted up in a lot of cities. I'm not saying that's going on in every city. I know in some smaller cities it might be more difficult. But from my understanding, general fund reserves are doing well. For instance, here in Mobile, again, they've been boosted up to handle this particular cost crunch that we're in. So I think most cities are internalizing and are bearing the cost of this increase. Even Pritchard, that has, that they've had budget issues that have been well documented over the years. They're just anticipating bearing the costs right now to keep their municipal services operating. So everybody's kind of internalizing what's going on right now. And they're just, having to pay more for gas like we all are. But yeah, there's no tax that I'm aware of, any tax increase that's in the horizon for any city or county, or a fee increase as well to accommodate for this increase in the fuel costs.
Tell us a little bit about how the statewide gas tax and that conversation plays into this.
Well, as far as I'm aware of right now, everything I've seen, from the governor is that there is no suspension forthcoming in the state gas tax. As we all know, there was a 10 cent increase in the fuel tax that's been gradually implemented. I think the final increase went into effect last fall in October. And that increase generates revenue to pay for the Rebuild Alabama program. And that's a road construction program that's being handled through the Alabama Department of Transportation, through the governor's office as well. And it's paying for road construction projects throughout the state. The governor, in recent interviews, has indicated she's not interested in suspending that at this point. Now, whether or not that changes down the line, that's to be seen. I mean, we are in an election season right now, and we don't know how long these increased gas taxes might last. So we're seeing some other states where other governors are saying that they're weighing that suspension or temporary suspension of the state gas tax. But right now, it doesn't seem like Alabama's going down that path. Of course, things can change week to week, so we'll wait and see. But I haven't seen anything that indicates that we're heading there.
Well, and that kind of goes along with the question we just got from Sherry. And she says, do we have a fluctuating gas tax that rises and falls with the price of gas? And it sounds like what you're saying is no, that tax is just a flat rate.
Right. The gas tax in Alabama, and of course, before this 10 cent increase, it had not been increased since I think it was the early 90s. And there's also a federal gas tax. There's been debates going on for years on whether or not that needs to be increased in order to pay for infrastructure, and that's been a debate that's been going on as well, even leading up to the recent bipartisan infrastructure agreement that was recently approved and implemented last year. So no, these gas taxes have stayed pretty much the same. They're not indexed. Alabama's gas tax, though, going forward, there will be an indexed increase to it after, I'm not sure after how many years, but going forward, we will see it increase slightly in the future based on a particular, I'm not sure exactly what the index is, but there is an inflationary index that it will be attached to.
A lot of things to consider here, and again, a lot of things to think about as you are paying at that pump, and maybe getting a headache while doing so. So, John, thank you so much for updating us here. We're going to leave the link to that story that you mentioned and that you wrote in our comments here for people to read that, get a little bit more in-depth information of what we talked about today. So, John, again, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody watching. I hope you have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. If you are celebrating today, I can tell me and John are matching today in our green. So don't pinch us, please. And if you're celebrating, please be safe. And everybody, we will see you on Monday. Thank you.